Welcome to the 2024 Kirby Lecture. I'm Michael Hill, I'm the CEO of Friends of the Lake District. And before we get going, I need to point out three very important things. The fire exits are back through the door you came through, but also one there and a couple of double doors there. So if you hear an alarm, lots of ways of getting out calmly. The loos are back where you came from, where roughly in that hallway where you got the drinks from. And we'd ask you please to make sure your phone is switched off or set to silent. Now, the Kirby Lecture is an annual event that we organise, and it discusses a different topic each year related to the Cumbrian landscape. We can do this thanks to the generosity of one of our former members, Baron Kirby de Clermont, who set up an endowment more than 30 years ago. We're hugely indebted to him and to all our supporters and benefactors. I'll hand over to our chair for this evening shortly, but before I do, I just want to take a quick straw poll. How many of you are members of Friends of the Lake District? If you could just put your hands up. Oh, excellent people. So I'd say that's just over half, which means there are quite a few people in the room who aren't members of Friends of the Lake District. But also may need some context about what the charity is and what we do. So for your benefit, here's that quick bit of context. We're a landscape charity. We were founded in 1934 at an event in Fitz Park in Keswick. That's a picture of our founders. So we're 90 years old today. Well, not today, this year. We're 90 years old this year. At heart, we're a campaigning organisation, and our first campaign was for the formation of a national park for the Lake District. Here's a pamphlet that we put out on that topic. Now, that was quite a radical move at the time, because there was no such thing as a national park anywhere in the UK. So we were actually campaigning for the very concept of national parks. The Second World War intervened, but we eventually won that first campaign in 1951, when the Lake District National Park was designated. And we went on in those early days to fight some other battles. This one is a pamphlet we published against conifer plantations, which were being established in rigid blocks across the fells. More recently, we've been instrumental in winning the campaign for a speed limit on Windermere at the turn of this century, which protects the tranquility of that iconic place. And you'll hear us talk a lot about tranquility. And today we're still campaigning, most recently to protect a sensitive stretch of coastline from an inappropriate holiday park development at Ron Head, and against the development of an adventure attraction in Elterwater Quarry, where we believe the increased traffic would undermine the tranquility of a village that's already under huge pressure, particularly in the summer. But we're not only about fighting campaigns. Since the 70s, we've been championing rural skills like hedge laying and dry stone walling, with training and annual competitions. And we look after around 600 hectares of land across Cumbria, managing it for nature, carbon sequestration, water retention, and public access. This is one of our sites in Threlkeld, just below Blencathra, where we organise activities and training to connect people to the landscape. These kids are from the local primary school. They just spent a very wet day building a willow den on our land there. And that willow den is now rooted and is sprouting magnificently. This lovely picture leads me on to our theme for this evening. It's all about their future. How many of those children will still be living in the national park in 10 or 20 years' time? Will they have jobs in farming or tourism? Will they be able to afford a home here? And if they can, will there still be a viable primary school in Threlkeld for their kids to go to? That landscape behind them, what will that look like? Will it be rich with regenerated nature, or will it be scoured by floods and drought? This is the question we're asking. What will the national park be like when it's 100 years old? And we're asking it because we're all heavily invested in the answer, because we love this landscape and we campaigned for the park to exist in the first place. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to our brilliant panel of speakers for the evening. And I'm very proud to say we'll be guided in our debate by Dame Fiona Reynolds, who has one of those CVs that you'd give your right arm for. She's held senior positions in the CPRE and the Campaign for National Parks. She's been Director General of the National Trust, Master of Emmanuel College in Cambridge, and she's currently Chair of the National Audit Office, amongst other non-exec roles. So I hope you enjoy this evening's debate, and let's have a round of applause, please, for our panel and our chair.
Thank you. Well, good evening. Do I need this? No? I'm going to carry on with that. I have a loud voice. That's the one thing I've learned over nearly half of your life I've been working in this field. It's a great thrill for me to be here. I've loved the Lake District all my life and have been involved, as you've heard, professionally in many of the issues. But this is a lovely moment to say to friends of the Lake District, congratulations on being 90 years young. There's plenty to do still. And it's a wonderful charity and with some amazing successes. But actually what I think we've heard there is this rounded view of a healthy, socially healthy, environmentally healthy Lake District is, I think, very much the issue that we're talking about this evening. And the challenge for this evening is to imagine the Lake District in 2051. So 100 years after designation. It'll change, it'll be different. But how will it be different? What will be better? What are the challenges it's facing now? And we're going to hear a lot about those this evening. And what are the challenges that it may be facing then? Now, I've just got one slide that I'm going to show you to kind of set a tiny bit of context for tonight. So, anyone know this picture? Hangs in Tate Britain. It's by John Glover. It's Thirlmere. So you don't recognise it completely. Thirlmere changed quite a lot when the valley was drowned. And it was painted in around 1820. So the thing that I find really interesting about this picture is that Wordsworth, who wrote his Guide to the Lakes, there are many versions, but I think the 1810 was the one that the date most people associated with it. This was the Lake District he was looking at when he wrote, and we all know he wrote about all the wonderful aspects of the Lake District. He wrote about the threats to the Lake District, of which the spiky larch was one. I often think, what would he have thought of the Sitka spruce if he hated the spiky larch? I'm always quite glad to see the sheep, actually, in this, because it was clearly a managed landscape, although very different, much shaggier than the Lake District we know today. But it is really interesting, isn't it? When we think of the Lake District today, we don't see this. But that's what Wordsworth saw. And so as we talk about the future of the lakes, and obviously this is very much the rural landscape, not the towns, not the villages, not the wider sort of social picture, which I know we will talk about as well. Just, we mustn't get stuck in a view about exactly what is the Lake District supposed to be like. It's going to change, it has changed, it'll change, but what are the dynamics, what are the forces for good that we want to see? So those are my few words before I introduce our wonderful panel. And we've got three pioneers with us this evening who are all going to talk about the work that they do, their thoughts about the Lake District in 2051, to stimulate what I know will be a fantastic discussion. I'm not actually going to introduce them in very much detail because I'm hoping that they'll do that themselves. But let me very briefly tell you who the three are. The first is James Robinson of Strictly Farm near Kendal, who is a pioneer of nature-friendly farming. So we're going to hear from him about that. The second is Daniel Holden, who's the managing director of The Quiet Side. Now, he is a pioneer of sustainability through transport and carbon in the rural landscape of the Lake District. And finally, we have Claire Bryant, who is a pioneer for getting new audiences and new voices connected with the Lake District. So we're going to hear from them first, and then we'll begin our exchange. So, James, over to you.
I might need my glasses, so I'll pop them on my head just in case. But actually, don't. I'm just at that stage where, I think as soon as you turn 50, it suddenly goes downhill. I think I'll pop them on my head just in case I need them. Yeah, right. There we go. So what will the national park look like in 2051? Well, for starters, disclaimer, we aren't even in the national park where we are at Strictly. But I think if we draw a line on a map, all it does is create division, whether you're in or you're out. So I think Cumbria as a whole is a very special landscape. So I'm going to talk about Cumbria as a whole. Lines on a map, all it does is it draws funding one side of a line and not the other. It creates a focus one side and not the other, and we're the wrong side of the line for that, although we have got away with no planning issues. We've been the right side of the line. So as you can see up there, 150 years our family's been at Strictly next year, so we're very lucky that we own it all now as well. We were formerly tenants of Underley Estate at Kirby Lonsdale. When my great-great-grandfather arrived in 1875, he had a good rake of kids. I think it was 8 or 9 children, all of which then went out onto farms and set up their own farms around, a lot of them around Junction 36 area of Kendal. So if there's a Robinson around there, they've all started at Strictly. Very lucky as well that I work with my dad and I work with my son as well. So I'm the 5th generation, and then there's my son Robert, who's the 6th generation. So we're very lucky that we've got some succession there as well. We're fully organic. We've been organic for 19 years now. We did that on part ethical, part financial reason as well. So our type of farm, it's hilly, it's steep. If you remember from your GCSE or O-level geography days, it was drumlins, and you've probably not heard that word since school days, but that's what we've got on our farm. We've got a lot of drumlins on our farm, steep-sided, quite soily on top of the hill and wet and rocky down in the bottom. So it's an interesting place to farm, but we can grow a lot of grass. We've got a lot of, obviously, rainfall where we are, and we can grow a lot of grass. So we milk cows on our farm, and we've got 270 dairy shorthorns. We milk about 130. The rest are young stock, and we've been pedigree on those for 100 years. So there's a lot of history on the farm. We're also really lucky that we've got a lot of hedgerows, a lot of small fields as well, which sort of typifies our type of farm. All the hedgerows that were, 97% of the hedgerows that were in place in 1841, which is the sort of first maps that were done on our farm, first proper mapping done on our farm. We've got 97% of those still in place. So we're really lucky that we've got all those old hedgerows, and they are very much part of the management of our farm as well, with those managed on a traditional hedge laying cycle. So really happy that Mike said about hedge laying as well within that. But things are changing with agriculture at the moment. Agricultural support is changing. We used to get money, BPS it was called, so the basic payment scheme, and you got money basically for owning land. Whether you were supposed to farm it, but quite often it was slipper farmers who weren't actually farming it. That's changing now. So rather than this BPS, basic payment scheme, where it was so much per acre, we're now getting paid for public money for public goods. So half the BPS is remaining this year, and then that's going to come down until 2027, when we'll get all money for public goods if we want some funding from government. But the trouble is that isn't really happening as the public money for public goods funding isn't happening as fast as the other ones coming off. So there's a lot of missed opportunity really for nature restoration within upland farms that really needs sorting out. So the government really needs to shape ourselves with that. What we're looking at though at the moment, we're creating a lot of wood pasture at Strictly. So even though we've got a lot of big hedges, we're trying to create areas that in 2051 we will be able to, we're hoping that by then we will have areas that we can set the cows into on hot days, these extreme temperature days. We're getting a lot more extreme weather events now, so whether it be flooding, wind, or extreme heat, we're going to have areas that we can send the cows into and stuff. So we're trying to prepare for that length of time. 27 years in future seems a long, long way away, but if we go back 27 years, number one was the Spice Girls, Spice of Your Life. So while that may, that absolute classic seems like it was only yesterday, but yeah, so we need to really sort of start doing things now for the future. But really, I think what we need to do really is just create that diverse mix on the farm as well. So rather than having monocultures of anything, we need diversity. So not necessarily smaller farms, because farms tend to grow big. I mean, we were an 80-acre farm when it was taken over in 1875. We're now 300 acres, so we've taken in sort of 3.5 farms to make ours. And farm sizes are probably going to continue to grow, and that's just the very nature of things. We can't really hold that back, I don't think. But what we need is diversity within that as well. So we need mixed farming. We don't need centralised food systems. Creates nothing but excess nutrients or low employment on farms. Technology tends to move in and replace people in those situations. So if we can have mixed farming, that's definitely livestock in the system. So we need livestock in there, and the livestock in the system will create a biodiversity as well. So like even a single cow in a year can support 1 million invertebrates on a healthy pasture system. So if you take the livestock out of that system, we'll lose a lot of invertebrates as well. So we need that. We need that diversity of thinking as well from a mixed farm that we only get from having more people on the land as well. And we need new people coming in. So we need to give access as well to as many people coming onto the land as we can. And that's through schools and communities. So we do school visits. My wife we do the school visits. We had a fantastic group yesterday coming around, and we were looking at soils and rocks. It was a beautiful day, and they just absolutely loved it. And they will remember that day for a long, long time. So if we get schools onto farms as much as we can, as farmers, we should, rather than seeing people coming onto farms as a threat, we really, which often farmers tend to do, we really need to open them up to as many people as we can. And that's groups and schools and everything combined. And hopefully those children that are coming on will look at the traditional skills that may be happening on farm, like the hedge laying, the dry stone walling, and they will learn that, because we need those people now to lay all these hedges that have been planted in the last sort of 10, 15 years. There's going to be a lot of hedge layers that we need. But we need society really as well to value those jobs. So rather than seen as a lesser job because you're not as academically gifted, we need those those people that are doing the hedge laying, the dry stone walling, to be seen as actual true craftspeople. And that's really important that we do that as a society. And I think if we give people pride in the way that farming delivers for their community, then they will support it and help it to thrive in the future as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. So, I now see Daniel, who's
Thank you.
scribbling his notes.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for inviting me to talk to you tonight. Normally at these events, I'm asked to talk about the Quiet Sites journey from being a standard holiday park to the sort of sustainable one it's become today. But I'm not going to talk about that tonight. I'm here to represent something completely different, something that started about 4 years ago, and it's sort of based on transport, really. And my main concern for the national park of 2051 is one of having too many cars. So our government has for many years measured economic success by the number of cars it moves rather than the number of people. And this national mistake is put into sharp focus when the large flocks of cars meet the narrow network of lanes which make up the majority of our national park. So with the number of cars generally perceived to be increasing going forwards, things do not look great if we carry on as the way we are. We already know what increased numbers of cars look like. For those of you who are here in 2020, post-COVID, when restrictions were lifted, things weren't great. So the solution, me and some other people believe, is to encourage those people out of their cars and onto other forms of transport. The community group Situ, which stands for Sustainable and Integrated Transport for Ullswater, was formed in 2020 and includes members from 5 parish councils around the Ullswater Valley, of which I'm a member of one of them, and it represents our local community and visitor-facing businesses. Working together with the local community, Situ are looking at a variety of projects to enable and encourage more people to travel sustainably in our valley. Our flagship project is the Ullswater Hopper Bus. The idea behind this bus was to serve areas not previously supported by public transport, to link accommodations with attractions, people with place. The service encourages residents and visitors to leave their cars behind, both reducing congestion and carbon. The bus is funded through a combination of grants, fair income, and crucially, local business support. 30 Ullswater businesses, and that's just about every single business in the valley, have pledged money to make up any shortfall in income. And so far, this year in 2024, we have moved, and actually this has just come in just before I got up. So far this year, we've moved 8,575 passengers, and looking to only take up around 30% of the money pledged by the local businesses. And we're hoping that this low percentage of pledge take-up will encourage businesses to re-pledge again next year. This is just one business model, and of course, I'm aware that many of the valleys in the lakes don't have that sort of that number of local businesses to call on. But I think I think at this point we have to remember that Transport for London, of course, has been around for hundreds of years. They have a budget of more than £10 billion, and less than half is made up from ticket income. So the rest is raised through loans and grants and, dare I say, congestion charge. The Hopper bus is now in its second year, and we are planning on an extended service in 2025, including a daily operation for the whole of July and August. Looking at other projects that Situ are working on, a new footpath from Penrith Station to Pooley Bridge. This path, the Emont Way, opened in 2023 and carries around about 1,000 users each month, so really popular, both with visitors and locals. It's possible to have your breakfast in London, get a train to Penrith, walk to Ullswater for your afternoon tea. Other projects that we've had going, an open road day, and this is where a section of road is closed to cars, just so people can reimagine what that road could be like. We gained planning permission and received a grant to close a busy section of the A592 between Watermillock and Air Force for just a few hours on one Sunday last year. But very sadly, we had to delay this initiative due to the highways closing the road before we could get there. We're also working on a new cycleway, again linking the Penrith Station with the Ullswater Valley, and this is not proving easy, with one landowner showing a real aversion to Lycra. But we started the project in 2016, and so I think we'll get there eventually. It's just a matter of keeping going. So these projects all benefit visitors, locals, businesses, and the environment, so make huge sense. And advantages, as far as I can see anyway, to moving people to other forms of transport within the Lake District include a reduction in carbon and congestion, which ironically, visitors and locals actually want. So it's not even a question of persuading people to do this. They want it anyway. There's an improved quality of life, again, for the locals and the visitors. Improved trading conditions for businesses, roads that become safe again to walk and cycle on. And stopping, before it even begins, the forecast national grid overload due to the thousands of electric cars that could be visiting the lakes in the future if we don't do anything now. An end to the visual eyesore of thousands of cars parked and moving around, electric or otherwise, it makes no difference. And lastly, and perhaps most importantly, the national park becoming more accessible for those who do not own a car, for those on limited budgets, and for car owners who are looking for an improved visitor experience. In my lifetime, I would like to see a sustainable and integrated transport become the norm. Networks of interconnected footpaths, cycleways, lakes transport, buses, hopper buses, etc., that can really allow car-free transport to be a thing. Ullswater first, obviously, and then the whole Lake District. Having a sustainable and integrated transport policy for the entire Lake District, I think, would make this and allow this to happen. And the great news here is that people really want it to happen. Recent research, supported by half of you, Friends of the Lake District, Lake District National Park Authority, ACT, show that better public transport is one of the main desires of both visitors and locals alike. So, again, the arguments have already been won. We just need to get it into place. Other concerns of mine for the national park future include the growing trend of fast tourism. Changing the way people travel by encouraging them out of their cars, I think, will mitigate this trend quite significantly. And James has already mentioned, but the poor quality of biodiversity in the national park is a concern, and all tourism businesses should be pledging to increase their biodiversity net gain. Again, both visitors and locals want to see this happen, so it's not a hard sell. Nationally, I would like to see more done to attract our European visitors travelling to the UK by train rather than long-haul flight, although our chairman nearly didn't make it tonight by train, but glad to see you there. The heaviest carbon footprint of all visitors in the national park is from international travellers arriving to the UK by plane, and it must be time for aviation fuel be liable for duty, I think. Yeah. And my last hope is that other tourism businesses follow the Quiet Sites lead in operating in a truly sustainable way. Our business proves that it's possible to run at a profit, to have a positive effect on the environment, the visitor experience and the local community. And like many in this room, I care deeply for the Lake District National Park, want it to be thriving as a place for inspiration, well-being, tranquility and adventure for our generations and many more to come. Thank you for listening.
Brilliant. Fantastic. Well done. Another truly inspiring talk. So, Claire, over to you now.
Goodness, I got to relax while you all talked. Here we go. Hello. There we go. Hi, I'm pleased to speak to you today on behalf of the Outdoor Partnership, an organisation committed to improving the health and wellbeing of people in Cumbria through equal access to the natural environment. Our mission goes beyond individual experiences. We aim to foster generational change by engaging people of all ages and backgrounds in meaningful connections with the outdoors. Central to all of this, of course, are the young people and the Lake District. And in 2051, I would like the young people today to, well, let's find out. Perspectives of the National Park differ depending upon where you grow up. For example, young people in Whitehaven and Barrow can see the National Park but do not necessarily engage with it. They struggle to have a vision for it. For them, it is somewhere for other people to go. We know that children living in Cumbria value the world around them. But as the slide shows, we know that where they live makes a difference. Children in South Lakeland, for example, are significantly more likely to value the Lake District and the local surrounding area than children living in Carlisle or Furness. We know from the same study that the world around them is also a significant cause for concern. I went to a school in Whitehaven to talk to 12-year-olds about this project. I thought I should go and do a bit of research. And many of them had no concept if they'd been in the national park. They could see it from the school, but couldn't quite relate to it. One person thought that Whitehaven was in the national park and would give visitors a bad impression if they accidentally arrived there. They thought signposting would be really good. We do know that climate change weighs heavily on young people's minds. For them, climate anxiety is real. We know climate change is going to have an effect on the landscape, and our previous speakers have thought about this as well. And we also know that being outdoors and amongst nature has a positive effect on mental health, and connecting with nature is a predecessor to pro-environmental behaviour. It would seem obvious, therefore, that if we want our young people to be proactive in the future of the national park, we have to provide as many opportunities as possible to encourage that positive relationship. However, there are significant barriers for young people in accessing the national park. These barriers are not just physical, such as limited transport options, which sounds like you're trying to address as well, and the need for parents or other adults to take them, but also informational. Accessing the park requires a certain level of knowledge, knowing what you can do when you get there, what there is to do, and how you access the opportunities. We need to give young people this knowledge, and it comes from schools, youth groups, family members, and experiences. Without this knowledge or the desire to seek it, young people face greater challenges in developing the skills needed to fully engage with the park. Young people don't know what they don't know. For many young people to truly value the national park, they must form deep, meaningful connections with it. Connections that go beyond being merely visitors. However, small steps are necessary. One initiative working towards this goal is West Cumbria Rivers Trust and their creation of a forest school, a nature and connection area at Myra's Ponds in the heart of one of the estates in Whitehaven. This enables young people from the local estate to engage with nature in a hands-on, personal way. This model can be replicated at other sites within and outside the national park, and that they can connect on their doorstep. From here, the next step for them is to go further afield and to explore opportunities at Ennerdale. And for the next generation to become custodians of our national park, we need joined up thinking, whether it's through residential trips, but with follow-up signposting to activities that they can do back on their doorstep, such as geocaching, forest schools, local clubs, or volunteering opportunities. We must provide pathways that lead them back to nature. We need to work with the communities, businesses, providers and landowners to create visible links, forming partnerships and an awareness of opportunities. Additionally, it's essential that we empower families and communities, building the skills and knowledge and confidence, enabling them to access areas beyond the honey spots to discover the broader beauty of the park. Furthermore, by working together to train young people for local jobs in outdoors, there's the outdoor instruction, farming, environmental work. We can show them the valuable opportunities available right here in their community. Schools also play a pivotal role in this process, helping to raise aspirations and create meaningful outdoor experiences. For example, Whitehaven has implemented a creative curriculum, and Milham School now boasts a mountain bike club, and there is the Cumbrian Award, which has been rolled out across schools in Cumbria to raise young people's aspirations of being Cumbrian. And by ensuring that young people value the outdoors, they can develop a desire to protect it for future generations, whatever that may look like. Until they are truly connected to nature, they cannot be expected to value it. And that connection starts with the experiences that we provide today. Finally, I'd like to share Lindsay's story and an example of what we're doing to bring these ideas to life. So Lindsay's a mum of 3 and a grandma living in the Myra's estate in Whitehaven. 3 years ago, she won't walk to the end of her road. She didn't drive, and she wasn't particularly sporty or outdoorsy. A friend of hers had seen one of the Outdoor Partnership's monthly women's walks and encouraged her to come along. This walk was around Loweswater. Since then, Lindsay's been walking each month with the group, learning hill skills such as map reading, how to use a compass, route planning, and reading the weather. She's invested in outdoor kit and clothing and joined one of our Inspiring Leaders groups. She's been up most of the fells in West Cumbria, including Catbells, which is a big achievement for her and the group. However, it's not just Lindsay's whose life has been altered by this change. For his 18th birthday, her son asked her to take him up a fell like you do, ma'am. So there we are. The next generation was following in her footsteps. She's also training to become a lone and leader now, has been paddleboard, sailing, canoeing, and she's bringing her family and friends along with her. We don't know what the Lake District will look like in 2051, but we do know that our young people will be at the heart of it. The future of the Lake District is everyone's responsibility, but whether people take action to protect the landscape depends upon values often developed through experiences in childhood, and it's our responsibility to provide those experiences. Thank you.
Well, my guess is that if these 3, if their visions come true, we would all be very happy people. I mean, each of you has set out an extraordinary sense of what the Lake District could be like. Nature-friendly farming everywhere, no cars, lots of Ullswater hoppers. And
some cars.
Some cars, just a few. And connected children, particularly those who are currently not, for economic or social reasons, able to access the Lake District. But I think we have to be honest and acknowledge that the reality today is that those wonderful visions are not in place for everybody and everywhere. And in some ways, you could argue that the Lake District is facing a sort of series of existential crises, in fact, with climate change, with biodiversity still declining, with huge issues around the way that tourism is managed, the carbon footprint, but also the pressures on this precious landscape, with changes in diets. I mean, the growth of vegetarianism and veganism, and will indeed there be a market for meat in the longer term future? lack of understanding of the countryside, which you did talk a bit about, Claire, but actually for many people that extends to not knowing where food comes from, not having any sense of the connection that we would all like to see between young people and the countryside. So, plus, of course, I think the sense that, you know, we're on the cusp of so many policy changes. James, you talked about the changes in DEFRA, and you put it very kindly, but actually there are people in this room who've been less kind, actually, because there are some major challenges with underspends in the budget, with real lack of certainty about, for many, many farmers, about where future income is coming from, and indeed, you know, how viable the future of farming is. So I don't want to cast a complete dampener on this evening, but actually, given that context, there are some really big issues facing us, and I'm sure you'll have questions. But let me just start by asking each of you, you know, what do you think, what's the biggest obstacle to your vision coming true? Which of you wants to go first? What's the biggest challenge? I'm looking at Daniel here. Ready to answer.
The biggest challenge to changing the way people move is really, I guess, it's getting the ideas to them, making them understand that it is possible to live in a different way. Certainly what we've done is try to imagine what the perfect electricity would look like in 50 years. And the transition period is a little bit messy, it's not perfect, but unless you imagine what perfection looks like, you know, I guess, you know, you can't plot your route. So for us, I guess it's getting to people to realise that actually they can have things better than they already have. Certainly, having experienced, you know, travelling on a bus much more than I ever have in the last year or two, you realise, you know, you reconnect with people. You know that the experience of travelling from A to B is actually much more enjoyable than just getting in a car and driving yourself there. So it's changing perceptions.
So
I think.
and behaviour.
Yeah,
So Claire, what about you? What's the biggest obstacle?
I think it's people's knowledge and where people get their knowledge from, and how's that passed to them? Are they getting knowledge from their parents? Are they going out and doing outdoor activities? Is it their communities who are having outdoor experiences on their doorsteps in the heart of where they're living, which they can then translate to moving into the national park? Is it through schools and their curriculums being broader than their core subjects and having those experiences that take them out to do the forest schools? And if we don't give young people the things that they can see and they can be involved in, then they're not going to be able to come into the national park or want to come into the national park and enjoy it and protect it for the future.
So there's a sort of psychological issue there, isn't there? A hurdle to be overcome in the same way as the hurdle around behaviour. What is it? What's your biggest obstacle, James?
Short term, it's government support.
Right.
But also short term thinking from government as well. So long term for a government is 5 years, 4 or 5 years. It's a term of government, term of office. Short term for farming is 5 years. You know, that isn't long term. Long term is a generation. It's 25, 30 years. And we need that. So exactly what we're talking about today, we need that long term thinking. We need to get things in place now. And a lot of talk is about food security, and we're impacting on food security with some short term measures, but we should get past that a bit really if we can and start thinking about long term food security. And that is by getting, you know, by managing the land right long term, we will see food security improve. But yeah, we just need that focus really of long term.
Well, you've answered my second question, which is what do you most need? Which I'm going to ask you to. You've said long term thinking, long term understanding. You say food security. I mean, from what you said earlier, I would kind of sense that you don't mean food security in a bubble all on its own. It's sustainably produced food, producing other benefits, as well as...
And you know, so I'm the chair of the Nature-Friendly Farming Network, get a plug in for them. But so we see working with nature as the only true sustainable way of producing food. And then it's producing food, but it's also all the other benefits that come with that as well. It's about access, it's about clean water, clean air, it's about improving biodiversity as well.
Yeah.
So.
Well, you're right about long-term thinking, and you're also right that is, as yet, an unmet goal. I have to say, my NAO hat on, we spend all our time talking about the need for long-term sustainable policies, not short-term fixes, which often have unpredictable side effects. So who's going to go? What would make the most difference to you, Claire?
I think joined up working between businesses, partner organisations, between communities, between schools, with a long-term clear plan that takes children from their forest school that they've done in nursery through to a enriched curriculum later in the year, so they've had an outdoor experience. They've then built on that experience at secondary school. They've had opportunities to take part in things like the Cumbrian Award, which leads into the Duke of Edinburgh Award, which leads into a substantial college courses that are accessible to everybody on both sides of the Lake District, which then leads them into wanting to be involved in the Lake District and to have those skills throughout childhood that brings them back when they're older, that they've got them to then come back into the Lake District to be able to read a map, to know where to go, or to want to work and live in the industry. And I think having all the partners working together to make sure there's a pathway for young people would be really important.
So joined up public services, that's another wonderful long-term goal. What about you, Daniel? What would make the most difference for your vision?
Well, what doesn't seem to make a great difference is money. You know, certainly money doesn't seem to be a problem if you get if you can get an idea that works and get it off the ground and running. Certainly, money's never been an issue with the ideas that we're coming up with at Situ. So it's behavioural change, as you mentioned before, getting people to actually getting them out their cars and actually making them realise that. And of course, as time marches on, we're talking about 2051, we're talking about a new generation, you know, it's the Gen Zers and what have you, who do think differently. They are more technically minded. So there's all sorts of opportunities there for things like gamification to get people out their cars and you know, sort of online sort of things. So yeah, there's opportunities, but I think it's a period of transition, but certainly in the Old Water Valley, it's a direction of travel that we need to stick to.
Yeah. But actually, just on that, and I'm just very, very struck. You're right. Lots of young people are out in the hills. They're doing, you know, they're using the apps, you know, all the rest of it. But actually, child poverty and child health problems are growing, particularly for urban children. I mean, we've a huge public health crisis alongside climate and nature, you know, for the have-nots in particular. So I think there's just this real sense that there are important opportunities that we can see, but there are also, you know, some really endemic challenges for our society as a whole, which national parks could make an amazing contribution.
I agree, yeah.
But we're not. Now, I hope we've stimulated some questions from all of you now. So please, if you have a question, put your hand up and we'll find you. We've got a mic. Please make it a question, not a speech, if that's all right. But I just want to hear, what do you think? What's your vision for the lakes? Have you heard it? How do you feel about what you've heard? And, you know, what do you want to ask the speakers? Yes, one here, thank you. The gentleman in the pale shirt, just there. Yep, you, absolutely. And then there's a lady just in front of you afterwards. Yeah. There's a mic here.
I have a few observations on some of the subjects, but a particular question for James Robinson, really. I've had some contact with Natural England on water captivation in terms of slowing down water coming down to the lower lands by putting in ditches and hedges. What's the real probability of that happening across the Lake District, and how effective will that be?
Great question.
Yeah, very good question. And it is happening now, so there's quite a lot of work being done on various catchments right across Cumbria, well, right across the country, really. And it's a case of lots of little things will add up to a big result. So there's been work done from the Eden Rivers Trust for a long, long time now, and that's already showing that it is working. With floodwater reaching Carlisle slower than it has been before. It's not going to stop flooding. It's just going to knock that peak off a little bit. But then also once we're doing that, so we're doing things at Strictly at our farm as well, similar to that. We're not on a big catchment. We're on the Beeler, which has a much smaller run right through. But we're doing little things that are benefiting our farm as well. So we're fencing off the beck sides, which are creating this fantastic habitat down the side of the beck with a longer, shaggier growth. Like you mentioned, looking rather shaggy everywhere. But we've got, so we're getting this riparian strip slowing the flow down a little bit, and the little bit, it might not be a tiny fraction, per kilometre stretch or whatever, but then that added up will make a huge difference. So there's a lot of things happening, and there's some very good funding for that as well. If you can find your way through the maze of schemes, the funding's actually pretty good for some of that work now.
Great, thank you. The lady just in front here.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's a question really for Claire, but also for all of you in terms of policy. I've worked in environmental education for over 40 years, still am. I was out with a group this morning doing about flooding. But schools, youth groups, there's some fantastic schemes. But where are these young people going into employment that's going to make it sustainable for them to stay and work in the park? We've heard all about minimum wage, about hospitality, farming. These aren't valued professions. There are a lot more people going into outdoor education, but they're having to do that as a freelance. You know, the courses here at the university are educating fantastically. But how can we, as a society, the future, ensure that it's viable to live and work and have a good quality of life in the Lake District?
I think that's such a good question. Claire, you start, but actually there are, where are the jobs in farming that need to be done? The skills in countryside management, water management. Claire, you start.
I guess the jobs are... well, that's what brought me to the Lake District. I was an outdoor instructor, and that's what brought me over here. And how do we keep people here? Is we start valuing the jobs that people are doing. We value, as James said, the hedge layers of the future. We don't think that they're the jobs that you're dropping out of school to do. They're the jobs that you're doing because you're raising society and you're putting back into what you're doing. And I think if we can shift as a society about our mindset as to these are important jobs and they're value jobs, and we start paying people proper wages to live in them. We bring back some of the apprenticeships that were happening within the Lake District. The centres used to offer big apprentices, maybe that some of them had accommodation for people to live in. That's how I was lucky enough to come across, because the centre had a flat that I could move into, which meant I could live here and then do my qualifications and slowly build myself up to being an instructor. So without having that infrastructure in place and having the centres that are there to support it, but also we need to have schools and society to view outdoor education as really important, because if it's dropping off the curriculum, unless schools bring the children to outdoor centres, then there's a less need for outdoor centres. So we need to make the curriculum, and I know Wales were trying to pass a bill to give every child the chance to go in an outdoor residential, and if we could get something more like that in the UK, which it didn't happen in Wales, but it sparked a lot of debate and a lot of conversations. But by bringing that over, it raises again the industry and it puts it back on the map and says it is important and these are important jobs and we need people to be doing them. So.
And what about jobs in farming, James? Because your son, you mentioned, is working on the farm, but I mean, do you have the opportunity to employ people? Is there not enough money in the system? I mean, how is
so it is, it all comes back to that, doesn't it? But I think if we get them engaged at a young age to start, so like I say, get children out onto farms to start. So there's a very good scheme, educational access, which we've been on at Strictly for 12, 13 years now. We've been getting school groups out regularly. But quite often, so it's a free visit onto the farm and it's great and it works really well, but it's getting them to the farm is sometimes hard. So a lot of schools can't afford the transport to come out, and we haven't got any rural transport. Even we're only 3 miles from Kendal, but there is no buses come up our road, so we can't use public transport. A minibus might cost £150, £200, and all of a sudden it's adding £10 onto a cost of a trip per head that a lot of people can't afford. So that needs fixing. You know, there's little things like that it's like, so where does that budget come from? Does it come from an agricultural budget or the sort of DEFRA budget, or does it come from a transport or educational budget? So there's a lot of things like that need sorting out. But then you mentioned also apprenticeships, and apprenticeships for hedge layers would be actually fantastic. So we need loads more hedge layers. But there's only 2 apprenticeship places for hedge laying in the whole country, and that's funded by the National Hedge Laying Society. But there's going to be huge amounts of hedge layers needed over the next 10, 20 years, but there's no funding for that. And I did ask DEFRA about that, and they said, oh, well, if the work's there, the hedge layers will find their own way through it. But there isn't that skill.
That's optimistic.
It is, but there isn't that skill set there within the rural landscape now to actually teach hedge laying, because it's so long since we've done it. So there's a lot of holes within that that would be fairly easily filled.
I want to ask Daniel, because just perhaps to broaden your remarks to the quiet side, because the reference was made to poorly paid jobs in hospitality and tourism, and you've talked in other places about the difference between what you might call exploitative tourism, which is kind of taking advantage, if you like, and tourism that is sustainable and brings investment and brings, a more positive relationship. I mean, how does this look to you? Are there jobs in sustainable tourism?
Okay, well, as the only representative of hospitality here, I'll answer. Certainly, our industry hasn't covered itself in glory over many years. Minimum wage, 0 hours contracts, and I've got to hold my hand up and say that there are a lot of operators that work like that. But also there are an increasing number of operators who are in for the long term. We employ 25 people on a full-time basis. We're open all year round. We provide 5 homes for those people, actually. Nearly half of our staff live on site.
Yeah.
And when we're talking about communities, I think we have to remember that actually really community is all about homes and houses. If you haven't got a house, you haven't got a community. On the parish council, we've got planning permission through for some affordable housing, which has received huge opposition from the locality. So it's a very difficult balance to strike. But certainly, where we are, I think the average, it's about 200 and something years of service combined with all the people that we've got. So we have long-term staff and they're valued members of our business, and the community. The local pantomime is written by our head barman, actually, and has been for many years, and it's a must. Actually, tickets will be going on sale soon. It's a must-see.
Shameless.
Very, very funny.
Shameless, but brilliant.
Does that answer your question?
It does, and I think what you've all illustrated is that a lot of this is about connecting different areas of policy, and yet we operate in these silos, don't we? There was a question right at the back, or not quite at the back. You?
Yes. For the past couple of summers, I've actually managed to walk from my home to my local train station in Staveley and get all the way down to the south of France, have a wonderful holiday and come back by train. So it is possible from here to there, so it must be possible from Europe to here.
Well done.
But what you find in a lot of European countries is a tourist tax. I'm just wondering what people's thoughts are about a tourist tax. Does the Friends of the Lake District have a view on it?
Well, that's a great question, but I seem to remember there was something here before. It wasn't called a tourist tax, but it was a sort of levy on some bed nights in some hotels.
In Europe,
you see it all the time. I agree. Okay.
And it goes into things like, particularly in the ski areas, it's what funds the ski lifts, and ski buses, and local transport.
Absolutely. So, Daniel.
So I'll kick off with that.
Yes, you will.
Okay. So, tourism tax is widely proffered as the panacea for Lake District's problems, but there are problems with it. Tourism tax is essentially it's a bed tax, and that's only 20% of the people that visit. 80% are day trippers. So that there's a problem there. Given that you raise this money, who decides where it goes? What's it spent on? Certainly at Situ, one of the things that we're conscious of is that tourism tax is coming. It's hit Wales, it's going to Scotland. There's a cycle, it always goes Wales, Scotland, England. So it is coming, we know it's on its way. But one of the things that we're hoping to do with Situ is have a network of projects that money is being spent on already. So when that comes, we've already got the infrastructure ready to spend on it. Because I'm very aware that tourism tax it is a thing. You go to Switzerland and Austria, and you see it all the time. But in many cases, that is administered much more locally than it would be in our own area. So I am nervous of it. I'm conscious it's coming, and we are trying to make a framework ready for it when it does come. Yeah.
That's so helpful. Right, there's a gentleman right at the back there, and then there's 2 more. Oh, there's lots now. Yes.
Can I just add in there as well? The other thing with tourism tax is in the UK is you must remember our levels of VAT are extraordinarily high when you compare them to our European sisters and brothers. They pay around between 8 and 12%, whereas we pay a flat 20%. That makes a massive difference to the actual cost of doing business, and you have to bear that in mind as well.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Bearing in mind the proposed boundary changes that's going to happen in the lakes, we hear a lot of various gateway projects. What interaction has Friends of the Lake District had or been invited to have to ensure that those gateway projects and boundary changes do not adversely impact on our wonderful Lake District.
So, who? I suspect this is a bit more for Daniel again. Do you, or not really?
Not really, no.
No. I mean, are you
Can I say that?
talking about the sort of tourism-based gateway projects, like you're arriving in the Lake District, siphon off people as they come in to have their induction or whatever, and a bit of fun and probably some food as well. You're talking about the tourism projects, yeah.
Yeah, but in addition to that, if we say Windermere, which has been on the cards for a long, long time and has changed about 5 times to my knowledge, it's the impression that the area gives when visitors come in and tourists. And if you're going to be serious about a project like that, you have to be careful of the infrastructure because it impacts on us all.
Yeah.
Not just tourists.
Yeah.
Of visitors, but residents who we rely on for our future.
Yeah. So there's a kind of warning you're sending there. Does anyone want to comment? Or actually, I'm actually very naughty because I can see Mike Innerdale in the audience. And the National Trust has to do a bit of this, actually. And it's inevitable, Mike, that you don't escape. And actually, how do you reconcile this wanting a sort of attraction, but actually making it really appropriate and really sensitive to place? Go on.
Yeah, thanks, Fiona. I'm Mike Innerdale. I'm the Regional Director for the National Trust. Lovely to be here this evening. So I think it's that balance is a really interesting one that we've wrestled with for many years as a large provider of a kind of tourism business. And I think a lot of the conversation that's happened so far this evening has kind of highlighted the need for the sustainability, whether that be in farming or in tourism business. And I think the gateway projects that have been mentioned are really important for that welcome, so people are able to kind of make choices at the point of arrival that they're not at the moment, going back to the points I made around kind of getting out of your car, trying to get people moving around. And the Windermere one, many of us have been trying to get that moving for many years, but struggling because of lack of investment from government fundamentally in other areas. But there has to be a solution to this because the Lake District can't continue. That shouldn't put at risk the quality of the visitor experience, which I think underpins people's enjoyment of this landscape. Not everybody wants to walk up a fell. Some people, majority actually don't, but a lot of them really don't know where to go. And I know a lot of concerns around Bowness and Windermere and the overcrowding. That's partly because I don't think we're doing enough to facilitate the experience for people when they arrive to interconnect. So you can get on a ferry, to connect to the other side of the lake, and then you can get on a bus that takes you up to Langdale. With that interconnection of relationships that Ullswater is pioneering, has to be a future for it. But when they get to, one of the reasons it works in Ullswater, when they get to places like Air Force and others, there's people there to welcome them on that experience and to go on. So I hope that helps kind of bring some colour to it.
That's really helpful, thank you. But I'm sorry to land you in it.
No problem.
Now, we had a couple down here. Yes, this lady here. Hang on, if you just wait, yeah.
My question is thoughts about sustainable housing. You know, there's a lot of lip service given to sustainable housing, but not a lot. We don't see a lot of action where we are. You know, people can't get staff, people can't afford to live.
And where are you, do you mind me asking?
We're in Keswick.
Keswick, right.
Yeah. Incredibly busy place. But people can't get the stuff for the restaurants and all of the other businesses because people just cannot afford to live there. And I suppose that's tied in for me with holiday homes and businesses going bankrupt. You know, you see a lot of B&B owners since COVID giving up.
Actually the Airbnb, which I know people have different views about, but honestly that's
But how can we get politicians, you know, can they think of anywhere we can involve politicians
housing.
in making that?
Really affordable housing, genuinely. Who's going to kick up? Claire, do you have a view on this?
No, I mean, I'd love my kids to be able to stay in the Lake District and to grow up here and to feel like they can have a home. And I think we need to start prioritising maybe more local people, like they're going to be the future and they are the future. But also maybe look a bit wider as well, like there are communities out in West Cumbria and we've got homes and there are places over there. So if we had good transport links, we've still got access in and out of the national park, and maybe it involves looking a bit wider and a bit bigger to those areas on the outside of the national park and those areas that are in Cumbria, and we have can build those communities and link them back into Keswick through transport, through sort of messaging and through sort of working together to bridge the gap between the edge of Cumbria and the national park.
The housing thing is such a big issue. I have to say, I've just written a long letter to Angela Rayner, who really wants affordable housing, but the tool she's using is to break the planning system and hope it all comes as an add-on to market housing. And my letter says it won't happen that way. You have to really focus on affordable housing in the right place, beautiful affordable housing, which is entirely possible to do, but that requires money and partnerships and collaboration and working directly with providers. And the will. So I couldn't agree more personally, but I do think at the moment we're just not in the right place. But you're completely right. Who would like to see more genuinely affordable, not market housing, but for either for social rent or shared ownership in the Lake District? Yeah, I just think. Yeah, and the reason people object to new housing development is because it's usually quite a large amount of market housing with maybe a couple of affordable units, which won't stay affordable after the first people occupy them. So it's kind of, we've got to do it properly.
I was going to say that the little development that we got planning permission for in Matterdale, I won't say the exact village, but look beautiful, like little farmhouses.
Well, you can do it, but it usually takes a leader, whether it's a business leader or a local community leader, with a strong vision and the capability of pulling partners together to make it happen. It does not happen just by wishing it would. Now, there's one here, I think, yeah?
A couple of things. Firstly, a huge congratulations to the Friends of the Lake District for bringing this very learned group of people together. I think in this room probably we've got real, genuine, deep-seated expertise on all the issues that are going to be presented. Before coming here, I wrote 10 bullet points. I won't read them out. But it seems to me what this group should do and use this opportunity to launch a reflection, and not a bureaucratic reflection, but a grassroots, community-led reflection on what the community here, the 40,000 people, the residents in the park, want. And for me, it would include things like giving the time frame you have of 25 years or so. You can really think out of the box and think of ways of making life for the community who live here much better in all sorts of ways, whether it's transport, energy, insulation, no waste, zero carbon, all a stack of different things you can think through.
Yep.
And to do something in a way which there's a genuine felt need that emerges from that. And you don't just do the vision thing. The vision thing is very important, but you're looking also for quick wins. You're looking for non-cost solutions which people can immediately see. The sort of initiatives happening in Ullswater, and there are a series of them. And Daniel's a pioneer, and there are lots of things going on. So my plea to you, really, I don't know whether it's a question, is that don't stop the process now.
Yeah.
Start a process which is very participative, that has some genuine, concrete, tangible targets with immediate quick wins, but also has the vision thing as well, which opens up a debate, gives direction, and where hopefully the Park Authority, with a new leader, can have open minds, can work to consensus, can be transparent, can set up governance solutions which will actually bring real benefits to the local community and to tourists. So it's completely doable,
Great
just
idea.
have to get it done.
Thank you, and I'm sure the Director of Friends of the Lake District won't let the opportunity pass to respond to that later. And I hope the three of you would be willing to be part of that, because it's such a strong kind of... Now, have we got... I think there was here... Yes, gentleman here. Right in front of me. It's always dangerous to be right in front of me because I'm looking at... Here we go. Right here. And anyone else, if you want? Yes, there's some at the back. Yeah, great.
I have a question about the lack of ambition. And I'll explain why.
Yes.
I'm a Londoner.
Yes.
Travelled most of my holidays with my family and parents in Austria, Switzerland, and so on. Came up to the Lake District for the very first time when I was a student at the age of 125, a good few years ago.
Yeah.
Arrived in Thelmy and couldn't believe my eyes. I thought I was in Austria. There's such a wonderful gem here in the Lake District, which many people don't know about. That was why my wife and I moved up here 20-odd years ago. And perhaps I shouldn't mention it, but I'm an academic at Lancaster University.
Great.
And quite active in some ways. In fact, also involved in I'm talking about big vision here, the vision of creating a national park city.
Oh, yes.
Now,
well,
you were at one
yes,
of the opening
no, don't
ceremonies
let's get too distracted, but
at the festival hall.
Yes, exactly.
But that's sort of great vision from one individual.
So your question is?
I'll come back to it in a minute. Because
I'm a very bossy chair.
I know,
Your
but
question.
yes. I promise I will come to a question. There is, but this is all very relevant because the idea has now been taken up, the National Country Park City.
Yeah.
That's why I'm addressing it to you. Is now taken up by Adelaide in Australia, in China, all around the world.
Yeah.
But there was a grand vision on how to make that happen.
Yeah.
Having lived here for 20-odd years and been involved in all sorts of projects with the Lake District, with the Park Authority, with the Lake District Partnership, which brings together 25 of the major organisations, including National Trust. My colleagues over there know about that. And my reflection on the 20 years is I keep hearing the same wonderful individual stories and initiatives over and over again. But what is missing is the joined-up thinking. And again, several of the speakers said this.
Okay.
So my question really is, how do we develop a grand vision? Again, that's back to what Tim Trott said a few moments ago.
Related,
but with ambition.
Yeah. Okay.
And it's got to be radical thinking. You know,
I'm going to pass that to our.
About the regulation, rules, new enforcement,
and
so on.
Yeah. Okay. Pass the microphone to your left-hand side for the next question. But I'm going to ask you three to comment on that. Are we too tentative?
I think from a farming, so I'll give it from a farmer's point of view. I think farmers are very, we as a community we're quite insular really. So we don't tend to speak to other organisations, parties very much. We do tend to keep ourselves to ourselves as a community. So I think the more we get people onto farms, the more we will share whatever we're doing. And I think there's such a huge amount of knowledge out there as well that are desperate to work with farmers. As a nation, we have 70% of the UK or something is farmed, isn't it? So there's a huge opportunity to do things through farmers, but we just need, as a farming industry, we need to be much more open and just work with whoever wants to work with us.
Well, there's someone in this room who works with farmers in Cumbria who I'm going to call in a minute because she has a quite big vision as well. But you two, do you think we're too tentative?
Okay, I can go. I think that for young people, and perhaps we don't know what their vision would be because they haven't developed it yet. They haven't had those experiences, but that's only going to become if we work together to give them the experiences. So I think it maybe take change from the government to say, right, all children need to have, and I think my big view for the landscape would be that all children have chance to come in an outdoor residential experience over their lifetime. So they don't just come once, because you can go paddleboarding once on a cold but miserable day, you're not going to go again if you didn't enjoy it. But if you come back again in 5 years, it might be hot and sunny, it might be flat calm, it might be really nice. So by having those long-term experiences that build upon itself is going to give a way for them to have a vision for the national park, to know what they want to know, and for visitors and for the park to start looking different as people start using it in a really sustainable and knowledgeable way. So my vision is for schools to
and the Glover Review had this vision of a night under the stars for every child, and it's yet another government report that got put on the shelf. I've had lots in my life, sadly. Daniel, you are already a visionary.
I was going to say, I was a little taken back when you addressed us all as not having ambition. Certainly, I don't know what it is in the water at Ullswater, but Ullswater does seem to be doing an awful lot. We have We have James Rebanks, the Beaumont Farmers, the Teesdales doing fantastic things in farming. We're doing a little bit with tourism, and Situ is an amazing organisation. I'm very proud to be part of that. The Friends of the Oldswater Way is another one that really pulls together and has been great help in opening the footpaths up and what have you. So we're doing as much as we can, and I think I mentioned in our talk, Oldswater first, Lake District next. We'll get our bit sorted, and then we'll be very happy to move on. Yeah.
You're a doer. So no, Julia, because I know Julia works with Cumbrian farmers, commoners and farmers, and this challenge about it has felt a bit in recent times that the farmers have been just faced with so much change and so much uncertainty. It has felt quite defensive. What's your view on this?
Thank you. Is the mic?
Yes, and then we're coming back here. Yes.
Thank you very much. Julia Raglanby, I'm a professor of practice here at the University of Cumbria. So first I just want to say happy birthday to Friends of the Lake District, and thank you for all the work you do. I live at Armathwaite, and you're incredibly been very active in Armathwaite with a campaign our community are running there. So big thank you for all that work you're doing all over Cumbria. It's not just the Lake District. Turning to the situation of farming, I've been doing I'm an economist, and I've been looking at the figures across the uplands, and all the farmers in the Lake District are in the uplands. And if we look across England, the average farmer makes, if they pay themselves the minimum wage, and most farmers, their skills are way above that level. If they pay themselves the minimum wage, they will lose on average £6,000 a year. So these are the people looking after the 24% of England, which are our national parks and national landscapes. My question to the panel is, do they think this is ethical? Because I'm afraid, Daniel, I do think money is a problem. I think there are lots of poor people. I cycled 500 kilometres around parts of Cumbria in June. It is a huge issue. There is poverty, huge rural deprivation, and businesses, micro businesses, are struggling.
Yeah.
So, and the farming community are very proud, but for them, if every year you're losing £6,000, how can you possibly look after the environment? How can you look after your family? And how can you look to the future? So should we be investing more? This is a question to the panel. Should we be investing more than 0.4% of GDP in looking after that 72% of land that James refers to?
Thank you, Julia. And I'm going to hold that thought because this gentleman's been waiting a long time for his question, and then we'll pick that up.
Yes, thank you for sharing your vision this evening. One thing it reminds me of is how very lucky we are to live in such a beautiful part of the world. On the topic of protecting the landscape and the character of the landscape, my question is, how much of a threat do you see the permitted development rights that 60-day pop-up campsites have? To give you a little bit of context, we have a landowner next to us who is starting to advertise his 2-month slot in the summer has come dancing wild with the flowers in the party zone.
Right. Okay. Doesn't sound quite as quiet as the quiet side to me. So look, James, you talked about Julia's point, this moral issue about money, but not money just given away, more money invested for good outcomes.
So I was at the Labour Party conference a couple of weeks ago, and I was in a really good session about flooding and stuff. And there was a lady there from one of the water companies. I forget which one she was, but Manchester. She was saying how great it was that the Manchester sewage system is going to get upgraded at a cost of £3 billion. That's one city in one area of the country, and they're getting £3 billion. Now the entire agricultural budget is £3 billion. So we're trying to do everything that we have to do as an industry for the same budget as what the sewage system is for one city, which that just blows my mind as to how little focus there is really on, and it's not about just producing food, it's about everything else that farmers bring to the landscape as well. So it's all laws. I mean, you spoke about the minimum wage. Well, there'll be very few farmers who will ever get towards a minimum wage, won't there? I hate to think what I would actually earn if I actually counted it back, because most farmers will be doing 70, 80, 90 hours a week, and they do it, and the farmers are the ones subsidising the cheap food. It's not the government payment, it's the actual farmers that are doing the ridiculous hours, really. and all the care of the land that they do alongside that.
Yeah, heartfelt, thank you. But can Daniel talk about PDRs? Because at the moment the mood is, planning's a nightmare, it's far too strict, it's slowing everything down, but actually the PDRs are, in protected landscapes, an important safeguard, I think is your point. What's your view?
I'll answer both.
Yeah.
Both questions, really. So firstly, tourism, we get the beauty of the farm landscape essentially for free. I completely hold my hands up and say, yeah, that's right. Now, how is that in some way charged for? I don't know. I don't know the answer. That's a government situation. But I do understand that our industry should be paying something towards that. Many holiday parks started as farms, of course, and we've moved out, and diversification for farming is one route to make more money. Do I think that's the answer? No, I don't. I do think that there should be a way that you can be rewarded for doing what you do in our park, which is absolutely fabulous, and I thank you for it. That's not giving you any money yet, but I do understand that there is a debt that needs to be in some way.
I'm just wondering how you diversify when you're doing 90 hours a week, isn't it? It's how you break away from.
Well, I'm coming on to that because that's the point that the last gentleman made about the relaxation of the permitted development rights, which is actually supported by the Lake District National Park Authority, which I was absolutely against, spoke out against, and was shot down by certain people that won't be named. I thought it was a disaster. I think both, particularly for this organisation, which is a landscape, let's face it, organisation, having pop-up campsites. Literally, we have 3 in Ullswater now, and they're not in any way they're not. Licensed parks, there's no, they don't have to pay insurance. They are a nightmare, absolute nightmare, in my opinion. They break the trust between licensed holiday parks and the communities because, we have to work with our community and we do so, and we're responsible and we pay proper wages, we give we provide accommodation and housing and, a community, I guess, for our workers. But permitted development rights, the extension of permitted development rights in many ways came about through lobbying by an online travel agent called PitchUp. They were the guys that actually decided that this would be a great idea, and post-COVID got down and started lobbying governments, and there wasn't much opposition to it. And it swung through. Again, supported by the Lake District National Park Authority. I don't know why they supported it. Perhaps they would let us know now. But certainly, from our industry's point of view, they are not a good not an answer at all.
Great.
Do you think there would be an appetite for park-wide Article 4 direction like they've done in the New Forest and parts of Cumbria?
I don't know. I know that in parts of Wales there is kickback now. They are starting to think seriously about going back to the 28 days, which I think worked actually in many ways.
Okay,
but,
I'm going to hold it there because I know there's 2 people next to Jack who've been waiting a long time, and we're starting to run out of time. So be very brief, please. Thank you, both of you. Take 2 questions together. Yeah.
Okay, so my question relates to maybe the other side of the coin of the housing question that was raised before. But jobs have been mentioned, but I feel maybe skirted over a little bit about that we have very high price houses in the national park, but an awful lot of low salary jobs. Yeah. So in my family, come from on both sides of the family, local, but I moved away as an 18-year-old and now come back. And what's enabled my son to come back is that he had a London salary that he could afford to live in Guildford. That's case study. Yeah. So I just think a bit more realism. Maybe what's the vision for increasing the range of high value jobs in the national park?
Yeah, I think we had a bit of that before, but I'm sure that there's a big need now. Well, who's the other person? Yeah, lovely. Yeah, yes, you? Oh, it's further along, sorry. Yeah.
Not me, sorry, yeah. It's the golden egg thing about the Lake District.
Yeah.
And are we killing the golden goose to laying the egg, because the other day I heard something about Keswick is a stag night and head night destination, and we've got these low-cost camping sites and everything else. It's all going low cost. There is the quality. The Lake District is the mountains to me. It isn't sort of stag nights in the Lake District. Just think what do you think about that?
I pity some of those European cities who get the stag night invasions, don't they? Terrifying. Now, look, I'm going to take a whole load of very brief questions, and then I'm going to come back to you to do quick summaries, because otherwise people are going to be really cross. So, the gentleman there, who's got his hand up, yeah. There's one here. Yeah.
Hi there, I'm Dave Felton. I'm Chair of Friends of the Lake District. Thanks so much, everybody, for coming.
Yeah.
Very briefly, there's one word that's not really been mentioned tonight, and it's the authority itself. And what I would say about that is, picking up on the question earlier on about a big vision, I think it's kind of lacking, and I would suggest that its natural home comes ultimately from the authority. And so the question is, how do we feed that into the authority and, much more critically, get the buy-in of the authority to back that vision?
Is there anyone from the authority here? Because I would hate to not. No, okay. There is a new chief executive, the gentleman here. And then I'm going to take just one. So there was one lady here.
Kind of work together.
Yeah.
I'll try and be quick. My name's Jim Campbell, ex-hill farmer from around Haweswater. It was good seeing the painting, the sheep in Mr. Glover's painting. The Lake District is a man-made landscape. It is been produced by upland farmers. By the landscape we manage, are nature-friendly farmers, but we are hemorrhaging farmers like there's no tomorrow. Around Haweswater, 25 years ago, it's not that long ago, there was 56 hefted flocks. There would have been herds of fell ponies. It's now empty. Today, there's only 13 hefted flocks left. What are the Friends of the Lake District's view on that hemorrhaging? And how important is it to tourism that we are losing that many farmers
Okay, so we're getting some of this sense of the crisis there. It's heartfelt, I know. In the interest of time, forgive me, we've got that. I'm going to pass to the lady, and then Mike first, and then this lady, and then I'm going to have to call a stop, but thank you.
Yeah, it's a very quick question, really. Rightly so, a lot of the problems that have been identified link back to kind of issues around funding and national government policy and all that goes with that, which is fine, but our ability to influence that is limited. So I'm always interested about a place and how a place responds to the challenges it's facing. And the Lake District was the founding place for Friends of the Lake District, National Trust, National Park, that were at their time moments of genius of a few individuals coming together. And go back to the point made about vision earlier. I don't think we can look to national government to answer all our problems, as it were, and I think there could be amazing innovation in the lakes. And my question would have been to the panel, if they were going to choose one area in their area that we could innovate on together to change the dynamic, what would it be?
Thank you. And this lady here, and then that's it, I'm afraid.
Hello, I'm Libby Robinson. The gentleman here actually started my question, but my question is, how important to the panel is the history and cultural heritage of this wonderful part of the world to you, and how important it is to keep it?
Thank you. Now, you have an impossible task, because I'm going to ask you just to say one thing each that has moved you from that last exchange. And if you were me, I've been moved by everybody's contribution. It's incredibly heartfelt, this last sense of, and this has reminded us of these huge challenges. So, who's ready to go first? Yes, go on.
I'll take the lady's point there. So for me, obviously we've been at Strictly for 150 years, which is still only a tiny fraction of the time that land has been farmed. And we are as landowners, we're just trying to make it better for the next generation coming on, whether that's our own family or it's someone else coming on. And I think as farmers, we have far more vision than anyone else, because we're always trying to do better. We're always trying to improve the land and create something that's going to be there for the next generation. So farmers, I think, are the original visionaries.
Thank you. Claire?
For me, the one question that was asked is what part would we like to see changed or to see more done to, and I think that would be the West Coast, to use our coast. It's part of the national park, and a lot of it is underused. There is swathes, if we're looking at tourism, or maybe the out fringes of the national park is a good place to sort of start and to build some of that tourism and move people away from the honey spots and out into the wider area, which would maybe address a few of the other problems. But also we need to start raising the people's aspirations, and we need to start paying, just raising aspirations, creating jobs that people want to do that leave them in the area, so people don't want to go off to London and then to come back, or to want to stay here. And then through raising those aspirations and perhaps raising the wages and to keep the jobs in Cumbria instead of outsourcing our marketing to Manchester or to other places, wherever it all goes, I'm not too sure on the wider structure of it, but to keep it here and to make it into a place where people can develop their skills, then we can start thinking about house prices and people being able to afford houses because they've got a decent wage and we've got an industry that supports people to stay here. So mine is to look out to the West Coast and to
that's a great thought. That West Coast is stunning.
It's beautiful.
And challenging. Daniel, last word.
Okay, well, I'm the last person, so I can be a bit controversial, can I now?
Yes, of course you can. Yeah.
How are we going to raise the standard of living? Well, in my business, in my business, the quiet site, we're doing as well as we can possibly do. I think it's fair to say that we're fairly highly ranked in the UK, and as such, we get really quality staff. People come to us for jobs. We have Costa Rican working for us. We came specific to the UK to work for us. That's great, and we can pay good wages because we're busy a lot of the time. As the Friends of the Lake District will know, we have got planning permission in for a luge track at, I think Julia mentioned Armathwaite. Pardon? We've got planning permission in, I said, Julia, sorry, yeah.
Oh, she's on it.
And that will certainly bring, new jobs, highly paid jobs across lots of disciplines with minimal impact on the locality. So things like that, I think, should be supported. I'm going to mention the gondola at Braithwaite. Now, I really thought that was a good idea from a transport point of view. It essentially transported visitors from the A66 up to the top of Winlatter, where it's an established outdoor activity adventure sort of centre. And I thought that was a great idea. And I know that this organisation was opposed to that. I think you need to think a little bit more about out of the box in terms of, if transport is a problem, and people have mentioned Austria and Switzerland, you don't go there and think, oh goodness, that looks out of place. And I think the gondola, I wasn't much to do with the gondola, but nothing to do with the gondola actually, but the gondola was actually within the tree line, so I think that was acceptable. Looking on, the National Trust person said, one thing would I do? Well, it's transport. I think transport for me is the main driver now. And history and heritage, well, we've been at the site for 30 years. My son's taking it over. I very much hope that we could emulate James and go for 150 years at some point. I won't be here to see it, but that's my ambition there. So I think that's all of the questions.
Brilliant.
Thank you.
Well done. Well, look, what an amazing panel and what an amazing audience, actually. Those questions, and there's a lot of passion in the room. Some of you from years of engagement in this landscape, many of you with incredible experience and knowledge and insight. If you could capture all that, actually, and hand it straight to Mike, I think, we'd be doing well. We need to download your brains. But I just want to reflect a couple of things before I hand back to Mike. The first is that we have got 3 extraordinary people here tonight who are doing extraordinary things. So actually, although there may be frustrations and there may be a sense that this, we have the same debates year after year, actually that's not true, because there are some incredible things happening, and there is a sense, I think, now of urgency and of focus, which we need to move forward. The second is there are loads and loads of problems out there that we can't fix. You know, government is not joined up. Funding is probably in the wrong place. There's short-term thinking. You know, we can say this a million times, and you know, some of us are trying to help in different ways. But actually, those are problems that, you know, we probably can't fix. But we can do something about the way that we all work together and work with the authorities here, whether it's the Park Authority, you know, of course, at the heart of things, but every single organisation here has a part to play. And we've had several contributions about the need for that vision, for that collaboration, that working together. I have to say, you know, when we did do the Glover review, not the John Glover who painted the picture, but Julian Glover, we did urge that protected landscapes the authorities be improved and strengthened in governance terms and in financial terms to be able to take the lead exactly in the way that you're describing. And I do hope that there'll be some pressure on the new government to pick that report up, which remains relevant and vital. But it's not just about structure and power and indeed money. It is about leadership. It's about personal leadership and about the ability to bring people together. And I hope that in the authority, with the new chief executive, we're going to see more of that behaviour as well as the kind of mechanics of doing it, because this is a moment. We've got leaders here who are absolutely delivering. We now need that to be on a bigger scale for the future of the lakes. So I'm going to hand to Mike, but I just want to thank you so much for what extraordinary contributions you've all made tonight, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you.
What a fascinating debate, and I feel quite emotional actually, because you put together an evening like this and you pose a question like that and you wonder whether it's going to actually yield, what it's going to yield. And I think I've just seen one of the most valuable 90 minutes of debate that I have seen for a long time. So thank you again to the panel and to the chair. I have definitely taken a lot out of it. The need for strategic leadership, which can join up some of the pockets of good practice that are happening already around farming and around tourism, particularly and around transport. The fact that we probably can't look to a cash-strapped national government for some of these solutions, so we need to find them ourselves. Can we do that on a park scale? Can we do that on a valley scale? Big question there. Probably both is the answer. Where's the money going to come from to underwrite some of these things? Well, you should look out for a research report that we're publishing soon. We've actually been round Europe, and we've looked at, not actually been around Europe, we have looked around Europe at solutions which raise money from tourism areas to solve the problems of tourism areas. So not just a bed tax, but other much more innovative solutions around that. We're publishing that very shortly. Look out for that report. I hope it will lead to more conversations like this one that we've had tonight. One of the big roles of Friends, I believe, is to convene these difficult conversations. There are other forums where that should be happening and sometimes isn't. And we're very happy to step in and be that forum. To the gentleman's point up there earlier, I think we could have quite a radical thinking group formed from tonight. We need to work out what its terms of reference are and what it's actually going to do, what real world impact it's going to do, because I'm not a great fan of talking for talking's sake. But as I said, I feel quite emotional about the success of tonight. So thank you very much for being part of it. If you've enjoyed this evening and you want to help us in our work to protect the landscapes of Cumbria, please consider joining as a member if you're not already, making a donation, becoming a volunteer, or simply check out our stall outside and get ahead of the game with your Christmas cards and your gifts. It all helps. Just talk to any of our team if you want to get involved. So it only remains for me to thank our panel and our chair again, to thank the team from Friends of the Lake District for all their hard work tonight, and to thank you for coming out this evening and being a part of this important debate about the future of the landscapes that we all love. So please give them and yourselves a round of applause. Thank you.